Hello, this is Danny Ryan, and welcome to the ThreeWill Podcast. Picking up with my conversation that I had with Tommy, our topics are going to be on people, process, and technology. This specific episode, we're going to focus in on a certain person, and that person is Lane Goolsby. Lane, thanks for joining me.
How you doing?
Doing great. This one we're going to cover a couple of different topics. One sort of picking back up with some personal stuff, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
And then I just did maybe a quick overview of some of the stuff you've been working on project-wise and some of the things that you've been learning recently. So we'll call this one Catching Up with Lane.
I'm sure the world is thrilled.
Angela can listen to it and say, "Oh, what's he been up to?" Or well, let's just get this kicked off. I know you had mentioned that you're starting to do some stuff with 3D printing. So with 3D printing, so what's to give me a little bit of backstory on that? How did you get into that? Where are you right now? What are you doing with 3D printing?
So the 3D printing story started off with me coming outside one evening and catching somebody trying to break into my wife's truck. And I'm a bit of a paranoid kind of guy, so the idea of having a third-party home monitoring alarm system just doesn't do a whole lot for me. So I decided that I was going to roll my own. So I went off and picked up a couple Raspberry Pis with some no-infrared filtered cameras and Bluetooth dongles and Wi-Fi adapters and things like that. And I've built this up with a Linux machine that's running Mosquito and some other cool little technologies. So these Raspberry Pis, when they're sitting and powered on, they're using motion detection to detect when anything's going on in the house or outside the house eventually. And they're recording and sending things to the Linux NAS server, and then the NAS server is either just keeping the logs locally, or if we're not home, it's shipping those out to Dropbox or some equivalent cloud-based service. I haven't quite decided on which one yet. Mm-hmm. And I got into 3D printing because I was looking for enclosures for these Raspberry Pis, and most of the enclosures I was finding had open ports for the GPIO sockets and the HDMI cards and things like that. They're not really conducive to being outside in the elements. Okay. And I got to looking at what it would take to just make my own 3D printed enclosure that met the specifications that I wanted. And I found ways to design it and things like that, and then send it out to third parties for printing. And then I got to looking at the cost, and it was about $100 more expensive just to buy my own 3D printer, and then I have my own printer. Mm-hmm. And then it's like when you go into the car dealership, I walk in looking at the base model Civic, and the next thing I know, I'm walking out with a high-end Acura, which is pretty much what I did. But
you fell to the upsell.
Yes, I managed to reel it back a little bit. I didn't quite go for the $9,000 filament based off of UV light.
I can just see you talking to Angela. Angela's for your safety, sweetheart. I'm doing this for you. This is how much I love you.
You can never argue with safety.
I'm investing in your safety. That's what I'm doing.
Never argue against safety.
It's to keep your wife safe.
Exactly.
I love it. You must love her a lot.
I do.
So you ended up with, I guess, the higher end, not the highest end.
Yeah, it's a
higher end model.
It's a MakerBot clone.
Okay.
The MakerBot, everybody knows MakerBot. It's into the 3D printing. They're kind of like I don't want to quite say the highest end, but they're pretty high up there. But all of their hardware and software, for the most part, is open sourced. So they open up for other people to do cloning off of them. And this is the one I've got. It's basically a MakerBot clone. Okay. It's from a company called FlashForge. And I've been really happy with the printer so far. I'm only about a week into it so far, and most of the stuff that I've been printing has actually been things for the printer itself. But
I was saying, how meta.
Exactly. It's quite meta. Just little things that make it just print a little bit better. But I have done a couple of fairly complicated prints. We did like an articulated robot that the first time we tried it didn't quite work out so well. And my wife and I have affectionately named him Slumpy.
I've seen pictures of Slumpy, and Slumpy does slump.
Yes, he's a little special. But he's worked his way into our hearts. As far as a piece of ABS plastic can.
Oh, nice. That's such a heartwarming story about a piece of plastic.
And on a cold day with snow, it's good to have heartwarming stories, isn't it?
Yeah, I know you guys can't see this, but it's snowing outside, and I guess in Atlanta, Georgia, that's a big deal. They haven't shut down everything yet.
Not yet, but the day's early.
Sure, yeah, the day is early, so who knows what's going to happen from here. So sorry, continue on with your story.
So that's kind of where I am. Like I said, I'm only about a week into it right now, but I think this is one of those, you've heard about 3D printing for a while now, and a lot of people talked about it as the new wave, and how everything, is going to come to a point where instead of going to the store to buy something, you're going to just download a file and send it to your printer, and it's going to just print it right there. I don't think the technology is quite there yet.
Okay.
I think the technology itself is pretty good. I've been impressed by how well it actually works right out of the box. I think it's a matter of just finding ways to get the filaments. They've got filaments that have embedded stainless steel and bronze and wood, and even filaments that are like soft rubber, so you can take it. And then I've seen guys take them and squish them between their hands, so their hands are completely flat, and then open it back up, and the thing just pops back into the same shape it was. It's really cool, but it's still, I don't want to say it's in its infancy. It's far from its infancy, but it's definitely not quite prime time just yet. But it's, as the filaments start to mature and they start to get more productive or versatile, absolutely, I think it's going to be really slick what they can do with these someday.
And you haven't used it for your home brewing?
Not yet. I
Do you
guess
see any places where it would help? I guess maybe spare parts or...
Oh, absolutely. Things like clips for holding hoses in place, or mounting like sparge arms and things like that. Absolutely, I could use it. The ABS has a fairly high temperature range, but I don't know how well it's going to work standing over side of a boiling pot. When you're extruding the filaments, the ABS plastic, you're extruding it somewhere around 230 degrees Celsius. So it's twice the boiling point. But I'm sure if it sat over something hot enough, long enough, it would probably start to be more slumpy than...
Well, maybe Slumpy can keep your beer cool or something. You could think of make a little larger Slumpy with his arms around in a hug, and it could hug your beer.
There you go. I can make that little koozie out of it.
The Slumpy koozie. That works. Very cool. Well, that's... And you said you don't have any updates. You haven't had any. You've been working on the 3D printer, nothing with the home brewing stuff recently.
Yeah, the 3D printer's kind of squirreled me away from the home brewing for now.
Yeah,
I guess I'm now 12 weeks away from being complete. So
very nice. So give me an update. We'll sort of switch over from the fun stuff to the not so fun stuff. No, to the project wise. What have you been working on recently? I guess has been keeping you up at night recently. Just at a high level. What have you learned recently? Some of the things that you're up to.
So the project I've been working on recently, company engaged us to take a product that they had been developing in SharePoint and find a way to package it so that it would be deployable at customer environments with the intention of using it like a product where download something or get a CD from a company, click install, and follow the bouncing ball, and then you got this product installed in SharePoint. And I think one of the challenges that we've been facing with that is, and we've all felt trapped to this. Every SharePoint developer has fallen trapped to this at some point in their career if they've done it long enough. Of you've got this rapid prototyping and rapid development model using SharePoint Designer and tools like that, but then whenever it comes time to take it from a lower environment, like a development environment or a QA environment, and then trying to get that pushed through either just a company's, 4-stage environment of development, staging, QA, production, or like in the more complicated scenario, like with this customer, of going through not only the lower stage environments to the point of getting to production, but also then having to deploy it in all the different customer environments. That opens up for a lot of really unique challenges. You've got to have a good, solid process in place of doing the day-to-day development and then getting that into some kind of a environment where there's a source safe control or TFS source control or GitHub or whatever the case may be, whatever your flavor of source control is, and getting that into a state from having it in that source-controlled, audited, reputable environment, and then getting it from there through the stages of testing and unit testing and whatnot. And then getting into also having it to a stage where you can deploy it in customer environments, which are completely different from what your local environments are going to be. You can just count on that. You've got this particular service pack with this particular cumulative update on your SharePoint farms. And then you get to a customer environment and they may have something that's drastically older or drastically newer, and that causes additional issues, causes heartburn. Then you start talking about throwing it into cloud environments like Office 365 or one of the many other third-party hosting environments like, I'm not going to name names, but they're using the cloud-based services that specifies predominantly in Project Server, which is based on SharePoint. And it does work, but it opens up unique challenges with trying to get that applied into the Project Server environment and on top of the SharePoint stuff. So,
and how does it work? Like, because a lot of people are using a JavaScript frameworks and different versions of frameworks. It seems like it could really there could be some overlap in what you're using.
Oh, absolutely.
It seems like it could end up being just a real mess.
And this particular one, it has 5 different components.
Okay.
3 of those components have a little over, I think there are a little over 1,300 files each.
Wow. And they're like JavaScript frameworks, or
JavaScript files, and they're mostly using Angular.
Okay.
But it's plugins for Angular, doing different things like handling file uploads like Word documents and Excel documents. And it's a really complicated application. And the little bit I've played with it, I've actually been really impressed with the tool. It's really quite cool. Having spent a fair amount of time around here being the Angular advocate, I guess, they've done some really slick stuff with that. But last time I looked, which was yesterday, grand total, the entire deployment folder, including the installers and all the everything else, we're looking at a little over 4,600 files. I think it was 4,602 files.
Wow.
We're using the Office Dev PnP provisioning engine for the bulk of the provisioning work. The template file that has all 5 different site templates in it has just under 65,000 lines of XML.
Okay.
So it is massive. It is huge. And trying to keep all of that straight and trying to keep all of that in line and in the proper paths and everything else by hand it's a superhuman task. I mean, there's no way a single person or a team of people could keep all of that straight on a day-to-day basis. And that's why having, and this kind of goes to the people process technology, you can have all the technology you want, but if you don't have a good process in place, you're going to have a lot of heartburn and you're going to have to buy stock in Tylenol because you're going to eat a lot of aspirin.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the situation that this customer was in. They've got this big, massive application it's well contained, but within its container, it's got a fair amount of sprawl to it, and it's got a lot of one-off cases, and it's been a challenge to try to get a process defined around it that's conducive to day-to-day development using SharePoint Designer or whatever tool that they're actually using, and then trying to get all of that integrated into a pattern that's repeatable and follows patterns and practices within the SharePoint world, because we all know SharePoint's got its idiosyncrasies, and a lot of these guys on these teams are pure web developers. So some of them have only seen SharePoint. This is the first time they've used SharePoint.
Yeah.
And that's been a challenge as well, as trying to get them to understand that when you work in the SharePoint world, for the most part, it's translatable, but there are definitely idiosyncrasies that do not translate to the standard web development world at all. And it's been eye-opening, I think, for some of them, just how the SharePoint world is unique and works.
Is this your first experience with the PnP stuff, or is this bad host? Bad host. Now watch this, all of them. You got to listen to that. Everybody's going like, "What is that?" Okay, cut. All right, I'm gonna slap my hand. Should have turned that off.
So
okay, what we're saying is a first experience with PnP.
This is my second in-depth experience with PnP.
Okay.
And I think I've probably pushed it to the boundaries of what it can do.
You have seen the cliffs of the PnP.
I have seen the cliffs, and I've actually had to scale a couple of them and fix them. There's a couple of minor commits that I made out on the GitHub project to fix some of the bugs that I found.
Giving back.
Yeah, sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring.
So it's been, like I said, it's a 65,000 line XML file that's the template. It's got a ton of stuff in there. And for the most part, it's just files that we're uploading in there, but we're doing other things with page layouts. We're doing other things with activating features. One of the sites uses the publishing feature, and that's proved to be a bit problematic because the PNP engine doesn't support publishing pages. At least not the version that I have. I've seen that it is coming. I've been watching the GitHub repository, and I've seen that some of the work has been done on that within the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
But, it wasn't quite there yet, and since I'm still using a forked version of the core because of those bugs that I fixed, I haven't had a chance to go back and get it back onto the NuGet latest stable yet. My bugs have been rolled into the main branch, so I could if I had time.
If you weren't doing podcasts with me, you would have plenty of time to do it.
If I wasn't doing podcasts and naming malformed pieces of ABS plastic.
Yes, that's also something else slowing you down, and hopefully the weather won't slow you down today either. You may be stuck in some place.
Luckily, I'm in a hotel room that's about a block from here, so. And I've got 4-wheel drive now, so I should be okay.
You should be just fine. Just fine.
After making it through a Michigan blizzard a couple of months back, I think I can handle this.
Well, I'll stop slowing you down now, and I appreciate you taking the time just to share what's going on. It's always interesting to find out what your latest explorations are into. And we'll see what's next.
Sounds good.
We'll see what's next. You almost have to have this is our quarterly update of what Lane is into. What's he got his hands into? But
what kind of squirrel is Lane chasing up a tree now?
Okay, and you have to send me your the picture of squishy Slumpy. You'll have to send me the picture of Slumpy, and I'll put it up on the blog, and so people can actually see a picture of Slumpy. Well, that's it for now. I'm done slowing the man down. Folks want to come to ThreeWill.com. We'll have the full transcript and some show notes and pictures of Slumpy. Drop by there. And thank you, everyone, thank you, Lane, for taking the time to do this.
You're welcome.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.